News Radio WRVA, the voice of Virginia.
Getting ready for work? Don't worry, we got you covered.
This is Richmond's Morning News with Rich Herrera on News Radio WRVA.
7:33 this morning on News Radio WRVA. Good morning, Central Virginia. Good morning, Richmond. The president will speak tonight to the nation, 9 o'clock, primetime address. So, what is the president going to talk about? Well, I bet you he'll touch on what's going on in the Middle East and Iran and the Strait of Hormuz. Maybe some other things, but I guarantee you he's going to talk about the SAVE Act and the fact that we haven't got it through the Senate. And the Senate continues to dither on it, and the president's getting pretty fed up. There was a bill that was passed, bipartisan, on housing. He says, I'm not going to sign this until you get the Save America Act done. So let's get a little bit of a preview of what we might hear tonight from the president. Joining us right now is Ashley Hayek. She's the executive vice president of the American First Policy Institute in D.C., and she joins us here on News Radio WRVA. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So what does your crystal ball tell you that we're going to hear from the president tonight?
Well, first of all, the Save America Act is absolutely critical. We are only 110 days away from the midterm election, and over some polls from 70 to 83% of Americans support voter ID. I think we're going to hear, I don't know if you recall, but earlier this year, late January, Tulsi Gabbard was spotted in Georgia when there was an investigation going on in Fulton County regarding some ballots. So I'm curious if we will get an update on what has been discovered and if we'll get a preview of any of the documents as it pertains to election integrity. We're so close within that 90-day window of when any sort of election reform can take place to make sure that we have the securest and safest elections, period. And this is a nonpartisan issue. I think the president is very much looking to see how he can expedite any sort of safety before we get to that midterm election. And that midterm election is going to have major consequences for all Americans. Okay,
let's break this down a little bit, if you don't mind. Ashley Hayek joining us from AFPI, the American First Policy Institute. For those that haven't been on top of this, and those that are just kind of tuning in like, okay, I kind of hear what Save America Act is, and yeah, I'm in favor of voter ID and some of these other things. Explain to somebody who's just maybe starting to pay attention to this. You say that this is such an imperative issue that we have to have done. Explain to them why this is so important, and maybe give a little bit of details to help people understand exactly what the president is asking for.
Sure. So, and this is the president, this is, members of Congress, Speaker Johnson, I have to give a lot of credit to driving a lot of this. The House has passed this many times, but the Save America Act requires voter ID. Is one of the measures in order to have secure elections. It also requires that non-citizens are not allowed to vote in our elections. And so it's a common sense voter ID. There's also, prohibiting men and women's sports, but it's also state list maintenance. And there's penalties. There's penalties for those elected officials who mistakenly register someone without the proper citizenship documentation. So it's pretty common sense. There's nothing controversial in here. So what I would like to know is why there are members of Congress who absolutely refuse to want to secure our elections. The goal should be to make it easy to vote and impossible to cheat. We have, our opportunity to have our voices heard when we cast our ballot, regardless of who you cast your ballot for. But we've also heard very far left elected officials say Democrats might not win another election if we have all of these safety measures in place, which is silly, right? Run on your policies and back the idea that everyone's vote is sacred.
Okay. Is ballot harvesting included in here?
I do not believe it is included in here, but I could be incorrect.
Okay. No, I mean, because those are the one things that we always talk about. I think ballot harvesting is one of the biggest issues that we have. You're a native of California. I moved from California years ago, and ballot harvesting, folks, if you don't know what it is, there will be activists or people that will go collect ballots from all kinds of individuals, and we have no idea, did that individual actually vote themselves? Did they go out and get that ballot from somebody and they finished filling it out? There's just no chain of command. I just the ballots by mail. I don't know about you, Ashley, but when I win the Powerball, I am not going to trust the U.S. mail to go take my ticket so I get my money. Why would I trust the U.S. mail? And I'm not impugning the mail, but seriously, ask yourself that question. Would you trust the mail to have no chain of command to give you your Powerball winnings? Why would you trust them with your ballot as well? I mean, there's so many things that make sense in this. So when the people are standing up against this, and John Thune can't get this across the finish line, I know it's the filibuster. I know that that's the reason why they're holding this up. But what do the critics of the Save America Act say?
Well, I want to actually touch on your point about the ballot harvesting in Watson versus the RNC, which was the Supreme Court decision that just came out. They basically kicked the argument to the states. The states they actually said this is a states' right issue, and that it's important to have some sort of federal bill or for the states to determine how their elections are going to be handled. And in election day must mean election day. I think that's really important. And so federal law should be able to make that clear for a reason. It shouldn't be election weeks. We saw what happened in Los Angeles with Spencer Pratt, where they had 2 months to certify an election for a local mayor's race, which is absolutely absurd. The other thing is, in that jurisdiction, there's a lot of talk about the fraud that occurred. What they have done in California, and specifically LA County, is they've allowed a number of laws. So it makes it impossible to track whether or not that election is secure. There's no chain of custody requirement. And that should be concerning to everybody. If you take the time out of your day to go and vote, then that vote should mean something, because you're deciding the future of our country, the future of your city, things, whether it's a school board race and you have kids in the school, or whether it's for governor and you end up with the governor who ends up cutting deals for illegal aliens, right? So your vote should mean something. You should know that it counts. Your question about, what the left's argument is on this is it's going to make it harder to vote, and it's preposterous. They say, no, well, if you're a woman and you get married and you have to change your name, you know what? This is the most sacred thing. People have sacrificed their lives for our freedoms to have this republic. And I'm sorry, I'm married, and I think that's a silly excuse. They say it's racist. It's not racist. In fact, Black Americans, Hispanic Americans overwhelmingly support voter ID, because it means that you have a say in our country's most sacred process. So it's a bunch of excuses for people who don't want any accountability. That's the bottom line.
Oh, Ashley, you're so silly about this. Let me look. Oh, wait a minute. I do have a real ID. Rich Herrera was able to get a real ID, and it has a little star, so I can fly anywhere. Okay, so that just throws that argument out the window. I find that preposterous as well. The other part of this is the filibuster. I have a question. Why don't we just let the Democrats try to pull the filibuster and go, fine, you go have Cory Booker talk for 48 hours and you have go Chuck Schumer talk for 72 hours, and you just line them all up and we'll just wait you out. Is there a possibility? Can that happen? Or is that just out of the realm of possibility, making the Democrats put their money where their mouth is and try to defend against having voter ID for, I don't know how long it takes?
I think that absolutely should happen. I think that conservatives should use any measure possible to get this across the finish line. My prediction is that tonight the president is going to release some very dynamic information about what has happened and what has been discovered in previous elections. A lot of people said that he was ridiculous, absurd, conspiratorial, and that his supporters were conspiratorial when we said that the Trump Tower was wiretapped. And what happened? It proved to be true. They said it was conspiratorial about the dossiers. It proved to be true. He said he's conspiratorial about the 2020 election, there being voter fraud. Well, tonight, I think we might hear whether or not there's some validation to that. And so far, the president has a pretty solid record on what's conspiratorial and what's true.
Well, see, that's the one thing that I'm wondering. Will he show up tonight with the receipts? But as I tell anyone, if you're going to go for the crown, you better not miss. So if he shows up tonight, you realize the left is just going to savage. They're going to tell half truths. They're going to take it out of context. Those receipts better be airtight, because the CNN, the MS Now crowd, the rest of those on the left are going to come after him and try to savage those and tear all of that apart. So if he comes out with those tonight, they've got to be buttoned up. Otherwise, you're going to see a lot of half truths out there and even more confusion than we have today. What
I think will be a win for the president is some sort of transparency in the process. If he can present some sort of information that shows that there was any sort of question to the process, whether it was the 2020 election, maybe it's even before then, we'll find out. But this is the most transparent president in modern history, if not decades ago. And I have a very strong hunch that we're going to get some transparency and hopefully eventually some accountability based upon what's shared tonight.
Well, isn't it funny, Ashley? He doesn't put lids on himself the way that Joe Biden. Yeah, we're not going to do anything for the rest of the day. We're done at 9:00. The president, hey, come on into the Oval Office. You guys want to ask me questions? It seems like he has a press conference every day, or if he gets on Air Force One, he stands back there with the gaggle of reporters and just talks and talks and talks and talks and talks. Something completely different than previous administrations. So, yeah, you're right. The president is not afraid of a microphone and not afraid to explain himself and is the most transparent. If you just look at the access he gives the media, it is rather unusual to have a chief executive that's just willing to engage anybody, anytime, anywhere, as far as the media goes. Now, he'll give them the business back that they give him, but it is refreshing to actually have a president that will go out and speak and talk to the American people.
That's right. And what's crazy about that is he is like that. His cabinet is like that. You see them traveling the country, holding press briefings, holding press conferences. 92% of the media is negative against President Trump. And people are not getting the news and the true story of what this administration is accomplishing. If you look at gas prices today, gas prices are dropping. And what you hear from, establishment legacy media is that, this is a affordability crisis. Do you recall that in 2022, under the Biden administration, gas was over $5 a gallon? We are nowhere close to that at this point. But that's what they don't want you to hear. It's the same thing same song and dance over and over. I've never seen a group of people want our country to fail so badly because they have such disdain for our president. We should want to lift up the most needy, the most vulnerable in our country. We should want everyone to be successful. We should want America to be exceptional. And that is not what we see from one side of our country. And it's extremely unfortunate. You look at what's happening with fraud. I don't know if you had the opportunity to watch Todd Blanche yesterday, or even Nick Shirley participate in their congressional briefings. This administration exposing the fraud under the leadership of Todd Blanche and J.D. Vance has been absolutely phenomenal. Every dollar that goes to fraud, that goes to a millionaire who, by the way, we found and testified in the Minnesota State Legislature, found a loophole and was able to get government money. That's taking money away from someone who needs it. And that's what this administration is trying to expose. And I just hope they continue, whether it's fraud in elections, whether it's fraud in our government programs. I hope they continue doing the work to support the American people who deserve it.
Nah, Ashley, I was hanging out with all the Democrats. We were off doing something else completely different since none of them showed up for the testimony from Nick Shirley and all the rest. I mean, listen, they were busy yesterday. You had World Cup soccer. You had reruns. Judge Judy was on. They had important stuff to do.
That's right. I forgot that. I think all of them, one of them was there for a minute and then left. But that's what you expect when you have people like Keith Ellison, the Attorney General of Minnesota, who actually received political donations from one of the fraudsters who was recently convicted. Gavin Newsom's wife is being tied to an organization that has been grifting on baby diapers. So I guess this is what you expect from a one side of the party who clearly is prioritizing self above the needs of the people they're supposed to serve.
Ashley, I appreciate you coming on with us. We will catch up with you again real soon. Ashley Hayek, America First Policy Institute, our guest here on News Radio WRVA. Thank you so much. Talk to you later.
Thank you.
All right. It is 7:47 this morning on News Radio WRVA. Today's program brought to you in part by GreerFinancialGroup.com. Michael Greer wants to know,